前より前より
それが今はどうであろう。これが現時点におけるお前の総決算だというのか。責任者はどこか。どうあがいてもこうなるなら何もしないのが一番だ。四畳半から一歩たりとも出ぬがよかろう。
When was the last time you were given a duty, a task bestowed upon you, thus handing the torch of accountability, washing the dishes, taking the garbage out, carrying the grocery bags, filing taxes, or simply tending to the needs of others? These are all factors which influence you towards the realm of expectation. It would be an understatement to say that we breathe responsibility and expectation, whether forced or self-inflicted. And it could be mentioned that we're expected to fulfill certain responsibilities, or perhaps responsible for meeting the expectations imposed upon us, or the ones we impose upon ourselves. As we grow, these impositions naturally expand in unison. More variables are added to the plate, creating this family tree of benchmarks waiting to be reached. This could mean satisfying the academic and spiritual ideals of your parents or yourself, fulfilling the societal needs of society, or simply transitioning into independence. Now, responsibilities and expectations aren't merely growing in numerical value, but rather in its overall significance. Our consciousness seems to be more aware of not only their existence, but also of their grave consequences. Responsibility is not only universal, it comes in many different shapes, forms, sizes, and perceptions. People may view them as troublesome burdens that only exist to bring upon misery, yet others have perceived them to be a means of purpose. W. Edwards Deming labels that quality is everybody's responsibility, a collective shared duty that is taken and consumed in many different ways. It isn't a one-time subscription, but rather a perpetual, never-ending hamster wheel, the maintenance of a desirable, consistent standard, whether morally, politically, or even romantically. But what can be overlooked at times is the reality that it's easy to become completely enthralled, mesmerized, and consumed by such attempts at providing or executing quality. We remain vulnerable to losing ourselves, to our own responsibilities, and the expectations that accompany them. No matter the cost, no matter what it takes, even at the loss of one's humanity and well-being, one ensures to meet the standard, to embody the quality that's expected of them. One of the most common responses to the invitation of responsibility begins with postponement. Being characterized by such things marks the beginning of anxiety and a looming fear for the future. What happens if I don't meet today or tomorrow's quota? What if I can't meet said expectations? It is your responsibility to not screw up, to show that you're reliable, capable, and at times ideal, unfaltering. And the moment you show any sign of incapability is the same moment you reveal the blemishes you've worked to keep hidden. Inadequacy can easily be perceived as a shameful quality, or perhaps rather than quality, it is the lack of it. You are not good enough. It is a prominent theme throughout numerous titles, ranging from Damien Chazelle's grit-driven Whiplash to Pixar's Inside Out, but most of all, it is a realization many have come across, falling short of what is expected. Even on the receiving end, we've experienced what it's like to incur or express disappointment when a film or piece of fiction falls short of expectation. When today's schedule doesn't go as planned thanks to the inescapable reach of uncertainty. Just as responsibility almost remains inevitable, so does the potentiality of disappointment. There's so much energy, time, and effort that goes into making this potentiality less likely to happen, and that's only natural. The pressure, the possibilities that accompany the struggle can be so overwhelming that one resorts to escapism, or perhaps this all-conquering obsession to be perfect. There's this consumptive awareness of the inevitable uncertainty we call the future, no matter how much planning and preparation goes into it, which ultimately awakens fear and anxiety. We use fear and anxiety to keep ourselves in check, to be aware of the weight that comes with responsibility and expectation, and that not living up to those standards is pain, suffering, or perhaps not acceptable. The more responsibilities you add to your arsenal only elevates the gravity of such feelings, perhaps bringing on the feeling of hopelessness and imprisonment. Yet the irony here is that to truly be free is to bear the weight of responsibility. The freedom to choose inevitably means to carry the responsibility for our own choices and actions, and that's hard, perhaps terrifying to do, to acknowledge. Instead of willingly bearing the weight, some tend to prioritize convenience, or what's easiest and most comfortable. Persona 5 touches upon this theme in the existential sense, incentivizing the question of what exactly defines freedom. But most significantly, what does it mean to be free of freedom? To be free of responsibility and expectation. There's an addictive attachment that accompanies imprisonment and limitation. To not have to shoulder the consequences of your decisions and actions. To not have to constantly be in this state of vulnerability, uncertainty, and discomfort. Just as our fears and doubts are rooted in thought, we look to our thoughts to provide certainty, whether in hypotheticals or simply in desperation of the moment. We also use our thoughts to predict potential pain that originates from responsibility, freedom, and expectation. If we were to anticipate future possibilities, to rationalize our circumstances, maybe the pain would lessen. In this dreamlike state, it feels as if one is simply drifting, surrendering themselves to wherever the waves may take them, dancing to the tune of the current. It is then one is introduced to the white space, where the line between imprisonment and freedom has grown vague. This space has become the endless now. You aren't burdened by the vastness of options, the exponential stakes of ambition, or the tiresome ability to act for oneself. Indecision, inaction, and numbness has become commonplace. Within these walls you've created, are you free? Or are you imprisoned by something? We define sorrow and self-imprisonment as something to be sad about, but it's rather easy to overlook the comfortability it provides. We tend to relate to characters who experience struggle because they feel familiar, occasionally more familiar than idealized happiness, which can come off as ingenuine. But wouldn't it be better if we just happened to become a better version of ourselves? Beings who didn't have to experience struggle and loss. Surely life wouldn't be as depressing, right? You can have everything you'd ever want. You'd fit this perfect image that would meet any and everybody's needs, thus loved and valued by the external. Yet the internal says otherwise. But of course, life isn't a dream. It's easy to comprehend and perceive all of its miserable aspects, reinforcing the definition of reality. We attach ourselves to negativity like an inescapable plague, and some even thrive off of it. That's why change can be so uncomfortable. It means having to take on certain roles and duties that perhaps we weren't prepared for at that point in time. It could mean having to familiarize ourselves with the unfamiliar, having to constantly adjust and adapt to the uncertainties of life. This is called growing up. It's what happens when we find ourselves facing a great number of realities. You, in turn, start to become more and more realistic, whereas simultaneously your innocence begins to fade away. Your elevated comprehension of time makes you anxious. You start to make sacrifices to simply survive day to day, and freedom starts to feel more and more overwhelming. Memories feel more nostalgic than usual, and the burden of decision begins to burden you. Who can blame you though? I mean, who doesn't want comfortability, security, and the familiar? Growth feels painful because it's when we experience the other face of freedom, the side that forces us to make tough decisions and bear the consequences of them. The side that exposes all the aspects we despise about ourselves. Responsibility can be exhausting and terrifying because it could mean having to wake up to the same or another problem with no way out. It could mean having to face some very uncomfortable truths or potentialities. But over time, as life sails its course, maybe one realizes that it is precisely because of such pain that they're able to forge a more authentic version of themselves. The pain that comes with free will can be tumultuous, but the pain, the regret of indecision and inaction, is just as painful, if not more. Yes, you've made wrong choices, ignored valuable life opportunities, chased the wrong priorities, and have fallen short of expectation time and time again. And you know you can't change the past. You also understand how frustrating it can be to feel paralyzed and stuck. But the least you can do now is to take them as your own. Embrace them with open arms, with your head held high, no matter how demoralizing, exhausting, and uncomfortable it may be. As what could possibly be worse than paying tenfold for the consequences of indecision and inaction later down the line. And in the event you've related in some way to the things I've mentioned, the mere fact that you're here, listening to this today, is evidence that you have at some point endured the struggle of responsibility, freedom, and expectation. So instead of wallowing away in the white space, maybe it's time to wake up. Because to truly be human, to truly live, you have to wake up from the dream.